From the land of 10,000 lakes and just as many heartaches, welcome to the 301 Show. We're here to celebrate, commiserate, and maybe, just maybe, see a Minnesota team win it all. Whether you're dreaming of a Vikings Super Bowl, reliving the glory days of the Twins, or still recovering from the Timberwolves roller coaster, we've got you covered. This is the 301 Show, where the North remembers and the passion never fades.
Hello and welcome to episode 20 of the 301 Show. I'm your host, Charlie Wayman. We've got a great episode to get into today. The Wild and Wolves have completed 4 games of their first round series matchups with the Lakers and the Golden Knights. The Vikings finished the 2025 NFL draft. We'll get into that. And then the Twins did the best they could to get back something here in this early 2025 MLB season. Let's get into it and more coming up here on episode 20 of the 301 Show. All right, let's get into target field talkers here. The Twins won 5 of 6 in this last week. They had a homestand here against the White Sox and the Angels. The only game they lost in those 2 series was the shortened game due to the rain. But other than that, they won every other game. Bailey Ober now has 3 quality starts on the year. He has a 2.42 ERA in the month of April. That is after that horrendous opening season debut he had, where I believe he allowed 8 runs in 2 2/3 innings. So he has lowered his ERA significantly, but regardless, he has been pitching very, very well since. Also want to talk about Sunday Joe Ryan, maybe the best outing from a starter this year for the Twins. I know the last couple of weeks I've been pretty hard on them, so I want to try and be a little bit more positive this week because they did have a good week. But Sunday Joe Ryan, he pitched 7 innings, gave up 0 runs, gave up 4 hits, walked 1, and struck out 11. So he has been, I think, the most consistent pitcher for the Twins so far this year. Of any of their stars. Obviously, Pablo's been hurt. He's back now. Bailey Ober had the bad start to open the season. So I think Joe Ryan has been the most consistent starter. He's 2-2 on the year, but those 2 losses weren't 100% his fault. The offense just wasn't pitching that well. And if you look at another absolutely bright spot here, have to talk about this guy, is coming out of the bullpen, Louis Varland. He had his ERA last year was over 6 when he tried to be a starter. And in 14 innings pitched as a reliever so far this year, he has a 2.57 ERA with 19 strikeouts and 4 walks. His velocity's coming in the high 90s, barely touching that triple-digit mark. But he has been, again, him and Duran have been the most consistent pitcher bullpen arms here. And it's so nice to see Louis Varland coming back to what he was a couple years ago when they had him in the bullpen. That year they broke the playoff losing streak, and at the beginning of the year, again, he was a starter, and then at the end of the year, they moved him to the bullpen after he came back from injury, and this is what he was doing. And I've been saying for the last couple years, since then, they should have just had him as a reliever from the beginning, and they are doing that this year, and it's paying off. And I think Louis Varland is embracing that too. Like, I think he is mentally they're more prepared to be a reliever now, and he's okay not being a starter. So he is able to be more effective as a bullpen arm. Now, two more guys I want to touch on here. We'll go to the offensive side of the game. Brooks Lee over the last week was hitting .381 with a .435 slugging and a .435 on base and a .429 slugging percentage. Absolutely turning it around here this past week after being brutal. I think before that, now again, he was hurt. He was down in St. Paul with the Saints. So he hasn't been playing this entire since the beginning of the year. I think he's played 13 games now. But he had like a 108 average or a 180 average or something like that, something in the 100s. And again, he has been raking over the last week. So absolutely good to see Brooks Lee do that. And final guy I want to touch on here quick is Carlos Correa. And he had a pretty good series here against the Angels. And before that, he was quoted as saying, "My swing effing sucks right now." So he admitted it and admitted that he needed to get back to that, leader of this team. Because I think offensively, there are three guys that this team relies on. And you could make the argument, if you even include the pitching staff, they're almost the same three guys that this team just relies on as like their main cornerstones. But 100% offensively, this team relies on Byron Buxton, Carlos Correa, and Royce Lewis. Byron Buxton has been playing very well all year. Knock on wood again that he doesn't, go down with some sort of injury, but he has been playing very well so far this year. So if he can keep that up, he's not going to play 162 games. If he can keep that up and play 150 games, that would be the best season of his career. Because he hasn't played, 150 games, 160 games in a season, I think, ever. I think he's played in the 140s. He's played 100 games one other time. But if he could do what he's doing now over 140 games, 150 games, I think that would be the best season of his career, coming at age 30 or 31, however old he is. The other guy, again, Carlos Correa, if he can somehow get back to where we expect him to be the $30 million a year guy the Twins are paying him to be, that would be absolutely phenomenal. That would turn these hitting statistics around, which we'll get into the statistics in just a minute, the team statistics in just a minute here. But also, if they could, Carlos Correa is still a phenomenal shortstop. He's a phenomenal defensive shortstop. It's just he hasn't been putting the bat on the ball this year. That's the big issue with Correa. And it looks like maybe something's still going on with his ankle or plantar fasciitis or something, because he does not look as fast as he running down the first baseline as he had in the past. So if he can get that figured out and play like he did against the Angels again all year, then he's another very solid cornerstone piece of this offensive lineup. And the last guy, obviously, Royce Lewis. He can play like he did at the beginning of last year, and actually when he comes back, which we have an update on that we'll get to in a little bit. When he comes back, if he can play like he did at the beginning of last year, because he was slumping at the end of last year. So the beginning of last year, Royce Lewis being thrown into this team can only help. It can only help. So Now, I know I went over all of that, all the positives. They, won 5 of the last 6 games they've played. Take it with a little bit of a grain of salt here because they played the White Sox and the Angels. Now, the Angels were 500 when they started that series, and now they lost, all 3 games against the Twins. So take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, though, because the White Sox aren't that good, and roster-wise on paper, the Angels aren't that good. They have, arguably one of the Mount Rushmore players in Mike Trout, all-time players. But he again, we've seen this with Mike Trout's entire career. One player in the MLB can't win enough games to be contenders. That's just the reality of baseball. Can maybe do that in the NBA. How many times did we see LeBron just carry those Cavs teams to the finals against the Warriors? Like, the Angels had the 2 best players in the world in Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout, and they never made the playoffs. Mike Trout's only played in 3 playoff games his entire career. So this Twins team has, they have those pieces to where I think they could actually be, playoff content. I don't know if they're good enough right now to be World Series contenders. They're definitely not consistent enough right now to be World Series contenders, but this team has some building blocks that they can work with, and they've got some guys down in the minors that, have had to be called up because of poor performances or injuries. So just know this team does have building blocks to work with at this point. They've got, the foundation. They need a couple more pieces to put them up over that edge to be true World Series contenders. So that's where it stands at this point. It'll be a true test here coming up this upcoming week. They start a 4-game series in Cleveland against the Guardians tonight, and they are a couple games back from the Guardians. They then go to Boston for 3 games against the Red Sox. Guardians are 15-12. They are second in the AL Central. The Red Sox are 16-14. They are second in the AL East. So again, if they somehow win, 5 of 7 or 6 of 7 against those 2 teams on the road, that would put way more validity behind winning 5 of 6 against the White Sox and Angels. They got to do it again. They got to do it against better teams, though. So I'm not getting my hopes completely up yet because I very well know that next week I could be coming back on this segment and going, the season's over. They all suck. But I'm my attitude right now with the Twins is cautiously optimistic. People should be cautiously optimistic about this team. Right now, as for their record, they are 12-16 on the year. They're in 4th place in the AL Central, 6 games out of 1st. The wild card race, they are in 10th place. The Baltimore Orioles have slipped behind the Minnesota Twins, which, again, the Twins need to keep playing well because I don't see this Baltimore team continuing to play this poorly all year. The Twins are 3 games out of 3rd in the wild card, so that will show you how tight that the wild card race actually is. On the offensive side of the ball, they are batting .226, which is 23rd in the league. They're getting on base 30.5% of the time, 21st in the league. Slugging percentage is .360 for 24th in the league. On base plus slugging is 22nd at .665. Runs scored is 106, which is tied for 21st. Home runs, 21, tied for 27th. Doubles, 51, which is 6th, which I did see the other day that Christian Vasquez had, I believe he had just a couple of hits. He had like 4 hits and 3 of them were doubles. And I think he got 2 more that day, so it was 5 hits, or 6 hits and 5 of them were doubles. Absolutely insane. As for walks, they're sitting at 86 walks drawn this year, which is 20th. Strikeouts, they have struck out 228 times, which is 13th. Stolen bases, they're sitting at 17, which is tied for 27th, which is another thing that Byron Buxton is doing phenomenally this year. He is just a menace to society on the base paths. He is causing havoc on the base paths as the other teams try to contain him. They're not doing that great at containing him, though. The team ERA is 3.64, which is 10th in the league. Quality starts, they have 6. Again, Bailey Ober has 3. Joe Ryan has 2 of those. So you got your 2, statistically this year, your 2 best pitchers have 5 of the 6 quality starts. They are tied for 25th in that category. As for whip, they are sitting at 1.21, which is tied for 9th. They have committed 18 errors, which is tied for 22nd. That is 22nd fewest. Fielding percentage is 23rd, tied for 23rd at 978. So again, almost, if not all of these categories are, in terms of the rankings, better than last week. They are getting better. But again, that is what will happen when you play 2 of the worst teams in the entire MLB. They're not the worst. We could be the Rockies right now. They are 4-23 on the year. But the Twins are doing better. So, got some news here, both good and bad. Let's start with the bad, though. The bad would be Luke Keyshaw took a mid-80s mile an hour pitch to the arm and now has a non-displaced fracture in his right arm. They put him on the 10-day DL for that. And the Hartford Hospital, this is according to the Hartford Hospital, say if x-rays indicate that the bones are not displaced, a cast will be required for 4 to 8 weeks. So he will be out probably around the 4 to 8 week mark. So the beginning of June would be his potential projected return time here. But switching to some really, really, really good news here is Royce Lewis started a rehab assignment with the St. Paul Saints. They said they want to get him in a couple of games here. I think he's DHing on Tuesday. This is Monday as I am recording this, so he is projected to get the DH start on Tuesday with the Saints. The Saints don't play here on Monday night. And then he will play all 9 innings in a couple of games this week, and they want him, projecting him back here on May 6th, next Tuesday, against the Baltimore Orioles. We'll try to get another episode out before that game to get a little bit of lineup projection here for that game. As for the predictions here, we had 2 come off the board for Target Field Talkers. I said the Twins will sweep the White Sox, which was incorrect. And I said the Twins will lose at least 2 out of 3 to the Angels, which was also incorrect. That brings the overall target field talker statistics to 3 of 17, which is 18% on the year. Now, we've got 3 more predictions going on the board here for target field talkers. The first prediction is that the Twins take exactly 2 games against the Guardians. They play a 4-game series, so I'm saying they will split the series against the Cleveland Guardians. The second prediction is that the Red Sox will win the series against the Twins. The Red Sox are going to take at least 2 of the 3 games against the Twins. If it's 2 games, if it's 3 games that the Twins lose, this one is correct. And then next prediction here, final prediction for the target field talkers, is that Joe Ryan goes at least 7 innings pitched, and he will strike out at least 10 batters in his next start. So, Twins take exactly 2 against the Guardians, Red Sox win the series against the Twins, and Joe Ryan goes 7+ with 10+ Ks in his next start. All right, moving on to the Nordic Report here. The Vikings finished up the 2025 NFL draft with 5 new draft picks. A bunch more additions with the UDFAs. We can get into that more next week when there's less to talk about with the draft itself. They also ended up with a new backup quarterback. The QB2 option is filled at this point for the Vikings. The draft results here, they stuck and picked at the 124, round 1, pick 24, with out of the Ohio State University. They picked guard Donovan Jackson. And I heard some debate, too, online about the Texans traded their next pick, pick 25, with, I believe, the Giants, who came up to take Jackson Dart. And I bet you that the Vikings were offered that pick or that package for number 24. It seems like they loved Donovan Jackson. I also think he probably would have been gone if they had traded back, and it seems like that's who Houston was going to take, and that is why Houston traded their pick. They, lost Laramie Tunsil this year. The Texans' offensive line is awful, so I think they were trying to go for Donovan Jackson, and he wouldn't have made it to the second or third pick, whatever it was, in the second round. So, and all of the D tackles were gone too. So, that is why I think they stuck and picked Donovan Jackson at 24. He also has experience playing tackle. Now, I don't think they're going to move him to tackle this season. Obviously, if both O'Neal and Darrisaw are healthy, there's absolutely no need to. But if Darrisaw is not, I think you have a better option to see Blake Brandel out at tackle for week 1 if Darrisaw is not back and ready to go for that game. Because I think Blake Donovan Jackson might be the better option at tackle. I just don't think they're going to want him to have to learn tackle, and then when Darrisaw comes back, have him have to learn, a whole new position here at guard. I think it would be easier and it would make more sense to send the vet out wide and have the rookie just play in the position they're going to want him to play in all year. But Donovan Jackson, again, he is a versatile offensive lineman. Ohio State had their left tackle go down, and they bumped him out to left tackle for the last couple games of the regular season, and then their run to the national championship. So he was technically a national championship winning left tackle, but he wasn't the first choice at left tackle. So that is why and obviously the open spot is at guard. Fully healthy, the open spot is at guard. And I do think he projects to be the week 1 starter at left guard if everyone is fully healthy too. But then they trade back in the 3rd round. They had pick 33 in the 3rd round, and they traded back to pick 38 in the 3rd round to take Ty Felton, the wide receiver out of Maryland. And according to draft expert Thor Nystrom, his biggest flaw, Ty Felton's biggest flaw, is he can sometimes get too disheartened on the like a block on the line. He needs to learn how to shed those blocks on the line of scrimmage. But I trust this Vikings offensive coaching staff to be able to teach him that. And obviously the most you're going to ask of him is being the 3rd receiver on this team. There's no shot that this kid is going to, 1, be expected, or 2, I don't think he really he's a 3rd round pick. I don't know if he's going to have the skill to be a top 2 receiver on a team. It'd be great if he did, but with, Addison and Jefferson, you don't have to worry about him being anything more than a 3rd receiver on this team. And I think it'll be a competition to see who's the wide receiver 3 on this team between him, Jalen Naylor, or I forget who else is on this receiver room, but he's got to beat out Jalen Naylor for the wide receiver 3 spot. So, and that's also on top of, you're going to have TJ Hawkinson back as another target pass option. I know he's not a receiver, but he's probably pass option number 3 at this point. Plus you got a revamped running back room with Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones. So there are other options where you can kind of bury this rookie 3rd rounder on the depth chart and have him learn for a little bit before, relying on him to be, the guy. I think, again, as long as Justin Jefferson's on this team, I don't think he's going to ever be needed to be the receiving option. So, also, just want to point out, too, the Vikings have had success taking, non-first or 2nd round receivers from Maryland. Stephon Diggs was a 5th round pick out of Maryland. So they do have they do have success here in the past. They do have a pedigree here in the past of taking wide receivers out of Maryland and not the first or after the 1st and 2nd round. Then in the 5th round, they had the first pick in the 5th round. Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, the D tackle out of Georgia. Again, it was a 5th round pick. I tend to say anything after the first couple rounds is just a kind of a crapshoot after that on what's going to hit and what's going to miss. You could make the argument that even after the 1st round, it's all a crapshoot. But if we've seen anything from the Eagles the last few years, the D tackles out of Georgia end up becoming pretty good. And again, I trust Brian Flores too to identify that talent. And that rolls into the next pick here, the 6th round, pick 25. They selected Kobe King, the linebacker out of Penn State. Again, if Brian Flores signs off on this, I trust that option. And then with the next pick, the 626, they took the Pitt tight end, Gavin Bartholomew. He was the one that had the hurdle. He had a tight end hurdle defender last season. So, again, another sneaky option to help out this tight end room here in Minnesota. One of the better tight end rooms here in the NFL. But moving on here to the trade. Well, they made a couple trades, but there was a trade for an actual player, not just moving back draft picks, that the Vikings made this weekend. They traded their pick that was 142nd overall. They traded back 30 spots to the 172 and also picked up Sam Howell, the third-string quarterback from the Seattle Seahawks. Over his career, he has played in 20 games. He was in that 2022 draft class. That was KOC and Kwesi's first year with the Vikings. So he had 20 games played. He had 4,139 passing yards. He has 22 passing touchdowns to 23 interceptions, 6.4 yards per attempt, 77.5 passer rate, and he has taken 72 sacks. Now, those numbers might look scary, and honestly, just at face value, they are scary. They're not great statistics if you look at it just like that. He's got 3 more interceptions than games played, so he's averaging over 1 interception per game. But he's not going to be the starter. He's the QB2. Also, I don't think Kevin O'Connell would have signed off on this trade if he didn't think he could turn Sam Howell into something. Like, I think KOC can turn, almost any quarterback into something. There is a line somewhere, but I think he thinks he can turn Sam Howell into, a solid backup quarterback to J.J. McCarthy. And again, knock on wood here, J.J. McCarthy, I hope he, doesn't get hurt. This is nothing against Sam Howell. I hope Sam Howell never has to play a snap because J.J. McCarthy is just that good and that healthy all year. So if KOC can do what he did with, like, in that 2023 season, he won more games with the Vikings having Josh Dobbs, Jaron Hall, and Nick Mullins as their starting quarterbacks than he did with Kirk Cousins as the starter. He won the most games he's won in a season as a head coach, KOC, was with Sam Darnold at quarterback. And everybody last year was oh, why'd you go out and sign Sam Darnold? Why'd you do that? Do you think he's going to be as good as what Kirk Cousins can? Do you think he can do what Kirk Cousins does? Now this year, all the talk is that exact same thing. Just, do you think J.J. McCarthy can do what Sam Darnold? I trust Kevin O'Connell. If Kevin O'Connell says we can win games with Sam Howell and J.J. McCarthy being the QB1 and the QB2, I trust that. I 100% trust that at this point. I believe KOC has earned every Vikings fan's trust until he hasn't. Until he proves that he doesn't know the quarterback position, he deserves the trust of every single Vikings fan. And that's where he's at right now. He has everybody's trust. He has my trust. Now, I don't know if that means that next year the Vikings are going to win more games than they did last year. It's going to be tough to win 14 games again, regardless of who you have at quarterback. I don't think the Chiefs are winning 15 games next year with Pat Mahomes at quarterback and Andy Reid as the head coach. I don't think they're going to do that, but I think the Vikings, might win 10, 11, 12 games, but they have a better chance of winning one playoff game, at least one playoff game. I would much rather have a 10-win regular season and win 1, 2, 3, maybe even all 4 playoff games. Playoff wins are more important to me than regular season wins. Because I want to see the Lombardi Trophy, being driven down 94. That's what I want to see in my lifetime. Before I die, I want to see a Lombardi Trophy come back to this state. that has been won by the purple and gold. So that's my little rant for today's episode. Do have some advice here for everybody, I guess. This is the two things to set this up here. First of all, Shedeur Sanders. He fell in this year's draft to the 5th round. And apparently, that was because he answered, this was all alleged, during an interview, he answered a FaceTime during it with an NFL team. He answered a FaceTime, not only did he just answer it, he didn't hang up right away. He stayed on the FaceTime during an interview. Then Brian Daboll, the Giants head coach, interviewed him too. And they sent him, one of the things that Daboll likes to do is send guys packages. And he called and it was very clear that, Shedeur Sanders did not read or study what he was sent. And Daboll called him out for being unprepared. And Shedeur Sanders got angry with him. He doubled down on the being unprepared. On the other side, Jalen Milroe got asked by a couple different teams during this pre-draft interview process. He got asked a couple different times about his flaws in his game and what he needs to work on. Milroe's immediate answer was how much time he got. And then proceeded to go over every part of his game that he thought he needed to work on. So my advice for everybody is humility goes a long way. Be humble. Don't just assume that because your dad was one of the greatest NFL players of all time that you should be in the NFL. I mean, how many NFL coaches and front offices and GMs are, a year, 2 years away from being fired, and they're willing to overlook how much stuff, legal stuff, criminal stuff, they're willing to overlook that. They weren't willing to overlook how bad Shedeur Sanders was in the pre-draft interviews. So that's saying something. That's saying something about how bad he actually did in those interviews. So we had a couple things come off the board here for the predictions. We had 6 things come off the board. We'll start with the bad. I said the Vikings will not pick at 24. That was incorrect. They did pick at 24. I said the Vikings will draft a Texas Longhorn. They did not draft a Texas Longhorn. Then I said Jake Majors will be selected by the Vikings in the 2025 draft. Said that before they signed Ryan Kelly from the Colts. Thought they were going to be in need of a center or have a center competition. But then on to the good here. Said the Vikings will pick more than 4 times in the 2025 draft. They picked 5 times. At the time, they only had the 4 picks. So I thought they were going to be, picking more than 5 times, but that is still correct. Said the Vikings will make a first-round selection. I was thinking about them moving back. Thought they were still going to either move back and then move back into the first round or something like that. And I said the first pick in the 2025 draft for the Vikings will be an interior lineman. And I said on either side of the ball. So Donovan Jackson is an interior offensive lineman, so that one is also correct. That brings my totals for the Nordic Report up to 15 of 44 for 34% ever. My 3 predictions here are I've got a week 1 prediction, and then 2 award predictions. So the week 1 prediction is the starting O-line for week 1 will be from left to right. So starting with the left tackle and ending with the right tackle. Left tackle, Christian Darrisaw. Left guard, Donovan Jackson. Center, Ryan Kelly. Right guard, Will Fries. And right tackle, Brian O'Neill. So Darrisaw, Jackson, Kelly, Fries, O'Neill. Second prediction is that this upcoming year in 2025, J.J. McCarthy will win an NFC Offensive Player of the Month award. J.J. McCarthy will win an Offensive Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Month award for the NFC. And final prediction for this week is that Justin Jefferson will win an Offensive Player of the Year award at the end of this season. All right, moving on to the Wolves' Den here. We'll move on to the two playoff teams. Games 2, 3, and 4 happened for the Timberwolves. They lose game 2, 94-85. It was 34-15 at the end of the first quarter. Looked like that was going to be a runaway game for the Lakers. But Ant and Randall put up 27 and 25 points. Luka and LeBron were just too much for him as they combined for 52 points on the night. And again, I thought it was going to happen at the end there. The comeback was going to happen, but it did not. And the Lakers tied the series after game 2. That led into game 3, which my brother was at. They won a 116-104. Honestly, one of the perfect games that you could ask for in this one. 116-104. LeBron went off for 38 points on 13 of 21 shooting. But the Wolves held Luka to 17 points on 6 of 16 shooting. Then Jaden McDaniels went off too. Scored 30 points on 13 of 22 shooting. Ant scored 29 points on 12 of 26. He also had 8 rebounds and 8 assists. This is the absolute perfect game from Anthony Edwards. He didn't lead the team in scoring. With 29 points, he was one shy of Jaden McDaniels. McDaniels led. But he was facilitator Ant. He had 8 assists. That's a minimum of 16 points that he added there being the primary assist. It could have been more than that. Could have been 24 other points. But it was 16 at minimum. And he pulled down 8 rebounds too. So absolutely fantastic game from Anthony Edwards. One of, if not the best games, all-around games he has played. That moves in to this past Sunday, yesterday, as I'm recording this. The Wolves won 116-113. Luka had 38. But Ant had 43. He had 9 rebounds and 6 assists. Randall had 25 on 9 of 22 shooting. Gobert had 10 rebounds. McDaniels had 11. And the number one stat, the two stats I want to that I think define this series from this one game, just game 4. There's two stats that come from this that I think tell the entire story of this series. The first stat is 4 Lakers played more than 40 minutes. There was another Laker, I can't remember who it was, but another Laker had 35 plus minutes. They had 5 players over 35 minutes. That is awful depth. You know, you got for the Timberwolves, Conley gets tired, you throw in Naz Reid. Gobert gets played off the court, you got Jaden McDaniels. You got so many. You got You got DDV if he's not starting. You got, the way I like to put it is, if you list the top 10 players in this series from either team, The Lakers, I think, have 2 of the top 3. I think 1 and 2 are Ant and Luka. There can be a debate on who you put where. But in this series right now, Ant and Luka are the top 2 players in this series. LeBron is number 3, for sure. Then there's a fall off. And then you probably put Julius Randle up there as the second best player on this Timberwolves team at number 4. And maybe Austin Reeves at number 5 for the Lakers. I think 6 through 10 are all Timberwolves. I think the Timberwolves have 7 of the top 10 players in this series. Yeah, it's great to have those 2 superstars. I think Ant is a superstar for sure. But the Lakers don't have the depth that the Timberwolves do. That'll kill you in a playoff series. Again, look. This is college basketball. It's the same sport, but it's not the same game. Look at what UConn did to Purdue a couple years ago in the national championship game. UConn said Zach Edey is scoring 35 to 40 points against us no matter what. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how hard we guard him. He's going to score 35 points. But it's, can we prevent him from also having 10 assists and 15 rebounds or something like that? Like, can we prevent him from doing everything else? Can we prevent the other guys from scoring? That in that national championship game, they only had one other player have over, have over double-digit points. I think it was only one other player have over 6 points. I think the third scorer on Purdue had 5 points in 40 minutes of play. So that is that seems to be what the Timberwolves are doing at this point. They're saying if that Roy Hachima, if he's going to score 38 on us, go ahead. If you want to run your offense through the 5th best player on your team, then go ahead. Do that. But it's not going to work. And it hasn't worked. That's why the Timberwolves are up 3-1 in this series. They've got 3 chances now to move on. Play the winner of the Rockets and the Warriors. There's another thing I want to bring up too. I think Ant wants to play the Golden State Warriors in the next series. Not because they're the 7th seed. And the Rockets are the 2 seed. I think he wants to play the Warriors because he wants to put an end to Steph Curry's season. In that Starting 5 documentary, like the Netflix documentary, The Starting 5, that they did last year following Ant around, one of the players in it was Ant, he said he wants to cook LeBron one-on-one. I think he also wants to cook Curry one-on-one too. He wants to play these guys. Now, it helps that he played with them in the Olympics and knows them. I think everybody wants to beat their friends at a game. Like if you and your friend were playing on 2 separate teams growing up, pick whatever sport you want. If you guys are, if you played for Edina and you were on one of their 7 billion hockey teams at the Pee Wee level, and you and your best friend played on, one of you played on the green team and one of you played on the yellow team, what game would you go harder for against? Would you go harder for the game against that one or against Orono? You probably would go harder against the people your friends, because you want to have bragging rights. I think Ant wants that, and he also wants to say he got to beat all of the legends of the game, the current legends of the game. He's not scared when he sees Steph Curry in a lineup, LeBron James in a lineup, Luka Doncic in a lineup. He's not scared. That's absolutely fantastic. I think he thinks I am good enough to beat them. we are good enough to beat them. We will beat them. And that is what they have to do to win a championship here. I think this team has enough talent to win a championship this year. Because if you look at this playoff bracket, they have the numbers of OKC and Denver. They clearly have the number of LA in this series so far. I think they can win a championship. I mean, it's not going to be a given. It's still going to be work. They can't take their foot off the pedal now. But they can win a championship with this roster right now. So if we go over to predictions now for the Wolves, then we only had one come off the board. It said Ant is the game 2 scoring leader and the Wolves will win. Doesn't matter if Ant was the scoring leader or not because the Wolves did not win that game. That brings my Wolves Den totals to 10 of 40 for 25%. We got 3 more coming on the board here at this point. First prediction. 2 predictions here about Game 5 and then 1 about a future potential opponent. So the 2 about Game 5. First prediction about Game 5. Anthony Edwards puts up 40-plus points in Game 5. The second prediction about Game 5. The Timberwolves win Game 5. The final prediction here is the Wolves will play the Denver Nuggets in the Western Conference Finals. So Ant puts up 40 and the Wolves win in Game 5. And then the third prediction is that the Wolves will play the Nuggets in the Western Conference Finals. All right, and the final segment here of episode 20 is a Rinkside Rundown. The Wild and Golden Knights are tied at 2 in the first round. The Wild won Game 2 by a final score of 5-2. Kirill had 2 goals and 1 assist. And Boldy, Foligno, and Zuki all had 1 goal. Gus Bus put on a stellar performance with 30 saves on 32 shots. The Wild also led 4-0 at the beginning of the second period. I just want to say this game was kind of brutal to watch. They won 5-2, so it was never really in doubt because it was. I think they got it back to 4-2 at one point, but Wild scored the empty netter and put it away. But again, the reason it was a weird game is because they jumped out to that 4-0 lead, and then they just went complete dump and chase mode where they pulled back, it seemed, for over half the game. We were early in the second period at this point, and they just didn't continue trying. And the first 5 minutes of the first period, too, were all Golden Knights. And then it was the last 15 plus the first couple minutes of the last 15 of the first and the first couple minutes of the second were all Wild. And they look like by far the better team. And then the Golden Knights look like the better team the rest of the way. And it did not look, it didn't look like they were trying the entire game. Which I'm like, if you won 5-2 and didn't try the entire game, this game could have been 7-1 at this point. But they then followed that up with a stellar performance. I thought a really, really good performance in Game 3. They won 5-2. Kirill had 2 goals again. Gus Bus stopped 30 of 32 again that night. And the X was absolutely rocking for Game 3. It was, that might have been the greatest atmosphere I've seen at the X in maybe a decade at this point, back to the Parisi Suter first time making the playoffs and what seemed like forever days. I think that was for sure the best atmosphere post-pandemic. Like, I think after the pandemic, I think that was the best atmosphere from a crowd. Because I think after seeing game 2 and then how well they played in game 3 too, I think this series they gave the first 3 games showed that the Wild actually have a chance to win this series. I don't think they had a chance against the Blues or the Stars a couple years ago when they played them in the playoffs. But I think they have a pretty good chance to actually not only push this to like a losing 6 or a losing 7 type series. I think they have a chance to win if they play like they did in games 1, 2, and 3. I thought they played pretty well in game 1, 2. But if they play like they did in game 1 and 3 the entirety of the game, and then like they did at the end of the first and beginning of the second in game 2, this game's going 6. This series is going 6 games. Vegas isn't getting it back to game 7 on home ice. They can play that way in Las Vegas and then come back here and the X will be rocking. If you win game 6 or win game 5 in Las Vegas, the X might not have a roof after game 6. With how loud it was for game 3, the series was tied 1-1. They might not have a roof after game 6. So I think they can absolutely win this series. Now, game 4 was again just a weird one. They lost 4-3 in overtime. Moose, Rossi, and Spurgeon all scored. Gus Bus, I think he shot 42 of 46 shots. It was not his fault. It was not his fault we lost this game. This game, if Gus doesn't play that well, again, this is Vegas's 7-1 win. If Gus does not stand on his head like he did. I also thought, for sure, the goal where Tomas Hertl tackled Ryan Hartman and it went off of Hartman and in, that goal should not have counted. But I get it why they couldn't retroactively call a penalty on that, because that makes the refs look super bad. If they're like, yeah, we actually missed a penalty on that. It's like, that would have been, they should have had that be a split-second decision. But they should have called that in the moment. 100% should have called that in the moment. Now, the other goal that people are debating on if it should have counted or not was the Spurgeon tying goal. Kirill definitely bumped Adin Hill. But it looked like he got pushed into Adin Hill. I believe he got pushed into Adin Hill. I thought he got bumped enough. Kirill got bumped enough to force him to bump into Adin Hill. And that goal should have counted. I think also, if this is a regular season, I think Vegas challenges that call. And the reason they didn't challenge that call was because if you lose a challenge, it's a penalty. It's a delay of game penalty. The other team goes on the power play. Which, by the way, maybe the NFL should take notes from the NHL. And it's a if you throw a challenge, it's like a 5-yard, 10-yard delay of game penalty flag. Because it's a side tangent here. I absolutely hate the replay review where it takes 5-10 minutes just to not overturn something because there wasn't clear enough evidence. I think the NHL has done a very good job of saying, hey, no, you get a delay of game penalty if you get this challenge wrong. So you have to know that it's going to be overturned to challenge it. Like I said, if this was a regular season game, I think the Spurgeon goal gets challenged I think 82 out of 82 regular season games, the Spurgeon goal gets challenged. Coach's challenge. Now, on the other hand, too, I also think this was the worst game Kirill has played all year except for maybe the 3 where he tried to come back from the injury before he went out with the surgery. Except for maybe those 3, I think this was the worst game Kirill has played all year. He wasn't a factor. It's almost like he wasn't out there. He didn't look like he was out there. Like I don't remember him actually be like a play he made. I was like, oh, Kirill's out there. I honestly don't from that game. So, but, that's the good part about having a superstar is, the worst game they're going to play is I don't remember him being out there. Not, he cost us that game. Kirill may have cost us the game by not showing up, but it's not like he, had a play that directly lost the game for the Wild. So Kirill is going to, I think, need to, step up in Game 5 if the Wild want to win Game 5, Game 6, and maybe, if it's necessary, Game 7. Also, the one more thing here, one final thing before we move on to the predictions. The best player in this series is, excuse me, the best player in this series plays for the Wild, and his name is Filip Gustavsson. I think the Wild would have been swept without Filip Gustavsson. Some of the saves he has had to make, and he had to make a really, really nice toe save in Game 4. But some of the saves he has had to make are absolutely unbelievable. And I was a part of the crew that thought the Wild should have traded him this offseason so that Jesper Wallstedt can learn from Marc-Andre Fleury in his final year. Now, I think it's going to be really fun next year having Wallstedt and Gustafsson be the tandem. And I think at this point they got to seriously consider bringing Gustafsson back, because next year is the last year. On June 1st, he can sign an extension. July 1st. I believe it's July 1st. July 1st, him and Kirill can both sign an extension. The Wild need to look at, for sure, Kirill, but they need to have a very difficult conversation about giving Filip Gustavsson an extension. And if I'm Bill Guerin, I think I'm giving him an extension at this point. On July 1st, I'm sliding the piece of paper across to Filip Gustavsson and his agent. This is what we're willing to offer you. I would do it. I would 100% do it at this point. That man, again, he not the great year last year after signing the 3-year deal. But that man deserves a contract extension just from this season. He got hurt. Fleury had to play. This team, again, people talk about the Kirill injury. This team could have been a higher seed if the Kirill and Joel Eriksson Ek didn't get hurt. At this point, I think the Pacific Division's weaker than the Central Division, so I'm almost happier we slipped to play in the Pacific Division side of the Western Conference. But I think if Filip Gustavsson doesn't get hurt and Marc-Andre Fleury doesn't have to play for like 2 weeks straight, I think this team is at least contending with Colorado for the 3 seed. Again, I don't know if they would have gotten there, but they're at least contending with Colorado for the 3 seed. So Filip Gustavsson has been absolutely the MVP of this series so far, I think. In my opinion, he's been the MVP of the series. If there was a Conn Smythe trophy for every single playoff series, I think I would cast my vote for Filip Gustavsson. Obviously, Kirill being a very close second and Boldy being a very close third. But I think Filip Gustavsson has been the best player on either team in this series so far. So, with that being said, it's an absolute shame that this first prediction is the one that's coming off the board first. Again, we have a couple coming off the board. The first one off the board, though, is that Philip Gustafson finishes top 3 in Vezina Trophy voting. They announced the 3 nominees, and the 3 nominees are just the top 3 voters. They already know who. The voters have already cast their votes for who is going to win the Vezina Trophy, and they just take the top 3 for each award. They just take the top 3 vote getters and name them as the nominees, and then announce the winner. But the winner has already been determined once the nominees come out. So Gus did not get top 3 in Vezina Trophy voting. The other incorrect prediction I had this week, I went on a Wild winning streak here. The other incorrect one was Wild win Game 4. They did not win Game 4, so that one is incorrect. But I salvaged that one by saying the Wild would win Game 2 and the Wild would win Game 3. So went 2 for 4 this week. That brings the Rinkside Rundown up to 10 of 37. And that is a percentage of 27%. That leaves the overall percentages here at 38 of 138 for 28%. Putting 3 new Rinkside Rundown predictions on the board here. The Wild will win Game 6. There is 100% going to be a Game 6. So no matter what happens in Game 5, the Wild will win Game 7. Will win Game 6 and either force a Game 7 or will win the series in 6 games. Another Game 6 prediction is that Gus Bus will have a shutout in Game 6. I think he is going to be rewarded for his playoff effort so far, and he is going to win he's going to have a shutout in Game 6. And then final prediction is Kirill scores at least 2 goals and at least 1 more playoff game this playoff. So he'll have another 2+ goal game in a playoff game this season. All right, that concludes episode 20 of the 301 show. Thank you for joining me on this episode here. Hope to see you guys again for the next one, episode 21 coming up next week. Like this video and subscribe to the 301 show, and find me down in the comments and let me know where I went wrong or where I was right, where you agree with me down in the comments down below. Again, thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.